First of all, I do agree with them in terms of the difficulties with the internet around child safety, and there is a real need to concentrate on that. However, when you see what happened today with Graham Linehan getting, I think it was yesterday, he was arrested by 5 armed police officers, kept in custody, took on well as a result of it actually. That is so disproportionate on free speech. I mean, it is just dreadful. I mean, all of us, I'm sure, get abuse on the internet. I get my fair share of abuse. But you have to take that unless it oversteps the line into threats. And once it oversteps the line into threats, then that's when the police become involved.
I'm going to bring you back in one moment, because I'm just going to look at the front pages, because many of them cover this particular arrest. And then I want to show our audience the tweets, because although they may be aware of the top line of this story, they might not know the individual tweets. But the Daily Telegraph leads on this. Starmer attacks the Met over the trans tweet arrest. The Metro, Father Ted creators fury at arrest. The Guardian features Zack Polanski, newly elected. And Europe's response to Gaza has been a failure, says the Spanish Prime Minister. UK hit by new sell-off in bond markets. And The Times, Reeve sees borrowing costs reach 27-year high, as we were discussing earlier, plus backlash over arrest of Father Ted creator for trans tweets. So this is what Graham Linehan said he tweeted earlier this year, and you can see them right there. If a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. I hate them, misogynists and homophobes. F them. And then a photograph where he's, I think it's a picture of trans activists rallying against the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year. A photo you can smell. Yeah, and I've already mentioned that. I hate them. Yeah. So, and according to Graham Linehan, because the only thing the police have said is that they've acknowledged a man was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence. That's why the police say they turned up. What's your view, Mr. Polanski?
These are totally unacceptable tweets, and I accept that people who are in politics, we get lots of abuse. But let's also face, we shouldn't get abuse. And I certainly recognise that women get more abuse than I do. For instance, I get a lot of anti-Semitic abuse. I'm one of a few Jewish leaders that have been in British politics. Today, a Muslim man was elected as my deputy leader, Motin Ali. I've seen the amount of Islamophobia he gets. We also know that for all of those groups, trans people have been in the sights of the nastiness and the toxicity for a long time. Now, I accept proportionality of police response is a conversation we need to have.
Well, do you think this was proportionate?
I think it was proportionate to arrest him. I think there's a pattern here.
5 armed police officers turning up.
Well, that's the bit that I don't understand why they were armed. And again, I'd need to hear about the police response.
And why there were 5, presumably.
For sure. But I think the fact that he needed to be arrested and the fact that I think on Thursday he's also in court for another violent disorder shows a pattern of behaviour, particularly towards...
Alleged violent disorder.
I mean, people are assumed innocent until they're found guilty. Let's be very clear about that. But I mean, if you listen to Nick Clegg, he's talking about the fact that 30 people a day are being arrested by the police or interviewed by the police around these sorts of things. What about the government's priorities in terms of crime? What has happened to those? What has happened about knife crime that takes place on the streets of London and the streets of cities right across the UK?
And the police are operationally, I feel like the Home Secretary now, the police are operationally independent from the government.
But the priorities of the government are not being dealt with in terms of safety on our streets. And I think people are very, very concerned about that. Meanwhile, we're policing the internet.
I had friends arrested just last week for holding cardboard signs saying Palestine action.
Yeah, because they are banned under UK law, and that went through Parliament.
But this is the exact problem, that the government are making...
People can support Palestine without supporting Palestine Action, which is a banned group.
The problem is that the government are embarrassed, and I think this comes to the Nick Clegg interview, that their connection with this US administration, their absolute timidity in calling out Donald Trump when he talks about turning Gaza into luxury condos, we know is the exact reason why they're prescribed Palestine Action. And I think it's important to recognise when the government... I mean, now I feel like the Home Secretary, they have intelligence on the terrorism from Palestine Action, which is why they were banned by Parliament. Do you believe for a second if they had intelligence, that intelligence would not have been leaked?
Why would it be leaked? It's intelligence
because
for a reason.
Because people are looking at the government and going, it seems ludicrous that when there is violence against women and girls, when we have domestic abuse, sexual violence, for people being arrested... So you don't accept
the Palestine Action were involved in acts of terrorism at military bases? That's not acts of terrorism.
I don't think throwing paint is an act of terrorism.
Oh, right. And damaging property that is needed for the safety and security of our nation is not terrorism?
I think when the flights are going to commit an ongoing genocide, then I think we have to have a proportionate conversation about why people are standing in solidarity with Palestine.
Yes, and people can stand very clearly in support of Palestine, but they cannot stand in support of terrorism. And that, believe you me, as someone from Northern Ireland, is something that the government needs to take very seriously. And I'm glad to see them taking it seriously, because terrorism is the rot in the United Kingdom.
But this is the lead into authoritarianism, which is to say that ultimately it's an issue of national security. We can do what we want. We won't give you the information. We're not going to leak it. We're not going to let journalists know what it is. We're just going to arrest you in the streets, in your hundreds, in your thousands, and keep silencing that dissent. And it's not going to work. And I think what it also does is put further pressure on the police, because they're constantly in these situations. We've almost joked about the Home Secretary twice now, talking about operational independence. The reason why we're hearing that over and over again is because the Met Commissioner and the Met Police are being put in impossible situations where they are following the orders or following the instructions of the law, but being put in things that are disproportionate and incoherent.
Nick, you want to come in?
Zack, can I just briefly ask you about something you said earlier on about how you'd like to work with Jeremy Corbyn and his new party, and talking about how you sort of wouldn't want to cancel out each other out at a general election. That sounds to me that we might be heading to some sort of informal electoral pact. You stand there, I stand there. Or maybe something a bit more formal, like the Liberal SDP alliance, where you stood under your party label, but there was an overall alliance label. Are we heading in that direction?
It's an unsatisfying answer, and I want to give you a stronger answer, but until we know what that party is and what they stand for, it's almost impossible to say. There are things that would be red lines for me, so if George Galloway was anywhere near it, for instance, that would be for me to say, no even informal coalition, we're just not getting involved. If, though, they are presenting policies and an attitude and communications that represent what I believe Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana stand for, this is about the people around them, really, then of course I want to talk to them, but it's just too early in the conversation right now to know where that's going to go.
OK. Thank you very much for being with us. I know you've done about over 40 interviews today so far, and you're up early to do more tomorrow. You got very emotional about your partner, who I think is called Richie, today, when you won. Why?
Rich is incredible, and I don't know if Arlene would agree with this, but people rarely see the impact that politics have on the people that you love and the people around you. And he is there every single day with his wisdom, with his love and with his kindness. He also works in palliative care. And I think I just had a moment on that stage too where I wasn't just talking about Richie. I had that experience of having an increased platform and increased microphone to thank the people he works with at St. Joseph's Hospice, but all the people around this country who are doing jobs like that every single day that rarely get talked about. And it's that beautiful moment of both acknowledging how proud and how in love I am with my partner Richie. I'm going to get emotional again. But also, yeah, to acknowledge those people who are so unseen and unheard, who are going out there every day. And I've done 40 interviews. It's been a hard day. I'm sure it's been nothing like someone who's worked an NHS shift today.
Sure. How long have you been together?
8 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us and our audience. Baroness Foster, thank you very much for being with us this evening. Nick and I are back tomorrow.